Hi, my name is Bob Teoh. I went into journalism before the invention of handphone. I'm a senior columnist in Sinchu Daily. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. First of all, I'd like to record my appreciation for being invited here by the organizers of this convention and also by EPI. Next, I find this an honor, a privilege to be here and to share some thoughts with you. In the earlier session, I was very impressed by Maria Resa's Rappler, the technology-driven the news structure that she and her colleagues have set up. Having said that, the future of journalism, the way forward, may be driven by technology, but it is not necessarily defined by technology. I think what it is defined by is by this question: what is journalism? What is good journalism? We have to go back. The future of journalism, we have to go back to the basic of what journalism is about. And I think by and large, journalists will agree that the first obligation of journalists is to truth. And is that we owe a responsibility to the public to be truthful. I think we are defined simply by that. And of course, by many more things that what we call a code of ethics. In the pursuit of truth, journalists have an obligation to exercise a personal conscience. So it comes back to what Nick says: I'm a human being, I have a conscience. I'm defined by my conscience, my profession is defined by my conscience. Okay, exercising conscience is easier said than done. We cannot afford to continue to leave our conscience outside the newsroom every day we come to work. We have to bring our conscience into the newsroom. This is because, from the principle of individual conscience, are the values of journalism flow. Fair reporting, factual reporting, verification of facts, a commitment to our readers and communities, and ultimately to a free, ethical, and responsible press. This is what defines journalism. So we have had a lot of problems earlier in this morning session. So where do we go from here? I think we need to be guided by a framework of ethics. We need an ethical framework. I would suggest that having an ethical framework is not good enough. This code of ethics must be enforceable. Okay, I would suggest that we need a workplace reform. We don't need more laws. We need a workplace reform for code of ethics to be enforceable. And this is to be accompanied by what I call a conscience clause into the contracts, employment contracts, or the collective agreements between journalists and media owners. And a breach of ethics by parties is a breach in terms of the terms and conditions of the journalists. So any breach is now considered a breach of employment contract. So that is enforceable by existing framework of labor and industrial law. So we got a handle on. It is not simply something nebulous or in the air. It is not something an ethical code, but it is a term, part and parcel of our employment contract. So this can be enforced through existing industrial mechanism, and there is no need to have to introduce any more new laws. There is sufficient law to enforce this code of ethics. And but having said that, the real problem is not applying employment laws. It is not per se, but by self-regulation, by the industry and practitioners themselves. Ethics, after all, cannot be legislated. It must be etched in the hearts of those who profess the ethical conduct. The conscience clause itself is not new. It's about more than a century old now, having first made its start in Italy in 1901, I think. And the first time the word conscience clause was entered into a collective agreement, again, was in Italy in 1919. And in Malaysia, the National Union of Journalists in Malaysia tried to introduce that conscience clause into the collective agreement, and that was referred to the Industrial Court in 1985. Unfortunately, the time was not right for the idea, and the court threw that idea out, and since then, no more claims have been made. But recently, following the scandal at the world of the news of the world about the phone hacking, you remember that, and that led to the inquiry by under Lord Leveson in just last year, and the conscience clause came back into fashion. And it came back to fashion, so much so that after the inquiry, Lord Leveson himself suggested there should be a conscience clause because journalists are not adequately protected. Okay, and IFJ, the International Federation of Journalists, I think by and large they are the biggest federation or trade union of journalists in the world, nearly half a million members they have all over the world. They incorporated this into their ethical framework, and I'll read it out to you. A clause of conscience, they call it. Journalists must have the right to act according to their conscience in the exercise of journalism. In case of fundamental change in the political, philosophical, or religious line of the employer, a journalist may put an end to his or her contract without notice and be paid compensation, equivalent to what he or she would have received in case of termination of his or her contract by the employer. In that case, you can walk out. If there's a breach of the conscience clause, you can walk out as if you have been sacked unfairly by the employer and claim compensation thereof. The IFJ clause says that no journalist should be directed by an employer or a person acting on behalf of the employer to commit any act or thing that the journalist believes will breach his or her professional ethics, whether defined by a code of ethics adopted by the journalist, collected at national level, or that would infringe the International Code of Principles for the Conduct of Journalism as contained in the IFJ Code. And no journalist can be disciplined in any way by asserting his or her rights according to their conscience clause. So that is very clear. I think that is adequate protection, which is none right now until the Leveson inquiry that proposed this clause, and IFJ took it out. Okay, there's another way of looking at looking for a solution is what we call in Malaysia and many countries the tripartite arrangement. Since the establishment of the International Labour Organization in 1919, that has been a feature of ILO in a tripartite arrangement between governments, employers, and employees in terms of defining what is the workers' right, the rights in the workplace, and how to enforce it. So that tripartite arrangement in Malaysia, for instance, way back in 1975, the government, the employers, represented by the Malaysian Employees Federation, and the trade unions, represented by the Malaysian Trades Unions Congress, came out with a tripartite arrangement called the Code of Industrial Harmony. This code is not legally binding, but it defines what is good for industrial harmony, and it's an obligation of parties to that tripartite arrangement to keep peace and harmony in the workplace. So that was in 1975. Now, nearly a quarter of a century later, in 1999, again, this tripartite arrangement came into place. It's called the Code of Conduct for the Prevention of Sexual Harassment. This, again, is not legal binding, but at least it defines what is appropriate or inappropriate behavior in the workplace in terms of sexual harassment. So this now, what I heard, that many cases have been brought to court, sexual harassment in the workplace, because of the outcome, the introduction of this Code of Prevention of Sexual Harassment. And this code, including the earlier one, Code of Industrial Harmony, has now been incorporated into almost every collective agreement that has been signed between unions and employers. For those who have not, for instance, the Bar Council, when there is no collective agreement, the employers themselves, the Bar Council themselves, incorporates this code into the employment letter. Before they employ anybody, it's in the letter to let you know that you are protected against sexual harassment according to this code of conduct. So although it's not legally binding, there is now a definition of inappropriate behavior. and action to be taken thereof. Similarly, I would suggest that a code of conduct for a code of ethics can be put into place by a tripartite arrangement within the employers, the journalists, and the government. And likewise, it need not have to be legally binding. But now, at least we know that the code of ethics is part and parcel of our employment contract. Plagiarism is not acceptable in journalism. So if the journalist plagiarizes, he can be dismissed on the grounds of this tripartite arrangement. Okay? But if the employer, the media owners, force journalists to do something like phone hacking, for instance, like the case, it is against the code of ethics, and the media owner is liable or can be liable, although it's not legally binding. But now what happens is now it can be a dispute. It can be a trade dispute. Whereas in the past, ethics, so what? It's your ethics, not my ethics. But now it is recognized. Tripartite arrangement recognizes as ethics. It becomes disputable. It can become a claim for dispute, and it can be referred to the usual industrial arbitration mechanism, labor department, and eventually to the industrial court, and even to the civil courts if the outcome is not necessarily is what the journalists would want or what the employees would want. You can go appeal to the High Court and Court of Appeal and even Supreme Court. So now there is a legal mechanism that can protect journalism in the workplace. And so now we have two approaches, a bilateral one between the employer and the journalist, a national one, which is a tripartite arrangement, the government, the employer, and the journalist. And I will even go a step further, and it could be a regional one even, because a code of ethics is almost it's something that nobody can disagree with, whether it's in Indonesia or in Philippines or Malaysia. We can agree to a code of ethics. It's a commonality. That is a common base for introducing an ethical framework. So this reform can actually take place across borders. So we will also see what is happening in the Philippines. Why in the Philippines can journalists be protected in a manner far better than Malaysia? Now we ask the Malaysian government, why are we not doing this? So it can be a regional, we open up extra windows, and it can be indirectly affects and enhance the level of protection within countries in the region. So now, the time has come for this idea to take shape. But the question is, who is going to bail the cat? Thank you.